what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government.
It all began with the Council on Foreign Relations, which was established in 1921 by the Rockefeller Foundation, which was established in 1913, the same year that the Federal Reserve and the IRS were instituted. These are not coincidences. The Rockefeller Foundation, of course, became a foundation. It's a tax-exempt, tax-free organization. It's a humanitarian, philanthropical organization, giving monies to the pharmaceutical industry, the growth of many different industries on the surface, and that's what they'll tell you. But also, they also worked in league with I.G. Farben, the Nazis. They set up the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Psychiatry and Eugenics Research in 1925 in Munich, and continued throughout the war, the horrific stuff. Mengele, all these guys came out of the out of this organization, this run by Rockefeller. Rockefeller supplied the Nazis with a fuel additive that was required to turn coal into gasoline, and the Jews in Auschwitz specifically, their task before death would be to turn coal into gasoline for the Nazi war movement. So do not be deceived. History, as I was very well, I always thought to myself, until I became aware of this true tyranny, I always thought myself to know quite a bit about history, and yes, I know quite a bit about the history that we read in books. The history that they prop us with, that they show us in high school and college, what we learned in school. Did you ever notice why they specifically supply, they hear, get this book, get that book? Because they're specific books in college. It is again a world government movement. So they whitewash the truth. The Council on Foreign Relations, as I mentioned, was founded in 1921, and the Rockefellers, of course, that was also a big part of it was with the Warburg family, who, of course, also started the Federal Reserve in 1913. Now, the Warburgs owned I.G. Farben. They had, so I mean, this is the connection. And the Warburgs, of course, were on the Federal Reserve, and of course, J.P. Morgan interests. They funneled money. They financed all the eugenics research and all this vaccinations and all this stuff that came out in the 30s came out of the Nazis. And the same thing with all of these different mind control experiments that the CIA ended up using. Now remember, Prescott Bush founded the CIA. That's George Bush I and George Bush II's father and grandfather. He, of course, founded the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, in 1947. Bush I was, of course, with the CIA. You know, and there's implications that he was involved in Kennedy's assassination. I mean, these are all things that really happened, my friends. But it does all go back to the Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, there are some things here. I'll just make some notes because there's a lot of pages, but I'm just going to kind of go through some things here that were very important. That the real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise powers from behind the scenes. This is in a letter dated November 21st, 1933. President Roosevelt wrote, "The real truth of the matter is that you and I know that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson." And this is written by Felix Frankfurter, the Justice of the Supreme Court, who served from 1939 to 1962. Congressman Louis McFadden, the House Committee on Banking and Currency Chairman from 1920 to 1931, stated, "When the Federal Reserve Act was passed, the people of the United States did not perceive what a world banking system was being set up here. A superstate controlled by international bankers and industrialists." That's right. It was sold as a way to stop the Panic of 1907 from ever happening. Then yet, they just created the Panic of 1920. They created the Great Depression. And everyone profited from this. It's history. But they sell you the propaganda because they owned at the time, and today too, of course, they owned the major newspapers. They owned the radio stations. Rockefeller Center. Come on, Radio City. The Rockefellers shadowed their evil by doing what appeared to be philanthropical things. Employing 75,000 workers during the Great Depression to build Rockefeller Center. Oh, doing that greatness. And it only took them 10 years to make a profit. And he went out on the limb and all of this. Oh, God. It's sickening. And it continues to this day. And it's worsening because now they're coming down on the total crackdown. It is true. And McFadden, of course, had them pegged. You know, it's just unbelievable. Going further in time, you know, Wilson, of course, was duped to get into the Federal Reserve. But getting back to the CFR, the British branch became known as the Royal Institute of International Affairs, provided by the members of the Round Table, and that began in the 1800s by Cecil Rhodes. Now, the Cecil Rhodes, again, didn't leave a dime to his family. He created this living distrust to the Rhodes Scholarship, and Clinton, of course, is a Rhodes Scholar and a Bilderberg member before he became president. Presidents are selected. They're not elected. And they're selected by these criminals that have hijacked our government. We have to take back our country. This is real. This is not a joke. Again, FDR took us off the gold standard in 1934, all part of the tyranny because it only took the Federal Reserve 20 years to bankrupt our country. Bankrupt the country, literally. Then they created the Social Security Act, 1934, pledging the American people as collateral on the debt because we were bankrupt and we've never even left bankruptcy. We are still bankrupt. Since 1933. And the way they did it is they took the gold. They used the gold as collateral. So far we've been paying our obligations, but we're debted up to the ass, as you know. It's unbelievable. This is a tremendous conspiracy, and it is not a joke. And as I've mentioned, studying conspiracies and studying the psychological aspect of the CIA and all of the other things that are related to mind control, it is truly, truly happening. Subliminal seduction is something that was outlawed because they realized that if you went into a movie and you had popcorn, that popcorn sales would go up because they just put a little strip on the film, maybe like 2 images. It could have been 1 image. And it subconsciously hits you in the eye, in your psychological mind, in your subconscious mind. All of a sudden you want popcorn. He did it with soda. That's just how they play with your mind. Forget about what they do to your body. Anyway, during the FDR years, the Council on Foreign Relations captured the political life of the U.S. Besides Secretary of Treasury Morgenthau, other CFR members included Secretary of State Edwin Stites. In fact, every Secretary of State since has been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. This is not a coincidence. It is not like you need to be there either, and oh, this is the think tank, this is what we need to do. No. This is the system. This is the system. Anyway, the CIA has been under CFR control almost continuously since its creation, starting with Allen Dulles, founding member of the CFR and brother of Secretary of State under President Eisenhower, John Foster Dulles. Dulles Airport, right? After Dulles had been at the Paris Peace Conference, joined the CFR in 1926, and he later became its president. Of course, it was started by John D. Rockefeller in 1921. John Foster Dulles had become one of Woodrow Wilson's young protégés at the Paris Peace Conference when they were trying to get the League of Nations, which thankfully the U.S. Senate and the Congress didn't get us into. But of course, after the terrible war that was created by the globalists who put all their resources funding both sides of the war and allowing attacks to occur to get everybody involved, doing all of these corrupt things then, we of course now found ourselves in world government. The foundations, the UN, United Nations Foundation of World Government, which is where we're moving. The UN speaks peace and makes war. Look at the history of that. Just explore it. And explore how each situation seems to have happened the same way and was resolved similarly when the UN gets involved. Now, the UN is ordering, well, they ordered America. Well, they ordered us to, we're taking orders from the UN. And Obama said, let's go and institute that no-fly zone. And then, of course, just like they've done in the past, they're taking, NATO forces are now taking over. We bring in the muscle because we've got that muscle up front right there, which was planned there, which was sitting there for a long time, before Egypt. So they bring our troops into Egypt, but the real object was to do this. Their covert means was to take out, put in the no-fly zone. That was their plan. That was their plan. Again, the rulers of this is the New World Order, the banking elite. These wars have to stop. These occupations have to stop. We don't have to be a cowboy. We have to realize you're being brainwashed by television and the media. Compartmentalized, not even realizing it. The worst type of tyranny, and you don't even realize you're under it. Anyhow, in 1940, FDR defeated Wendell Willkie, who wrote the book One World, and later became a CFR member. It just goes on and on. I mean, Rockefeller and the CFR wing proceeded to bury Goldwater as they painted him as a dangerous radical. Anyone that wants to break up and shake up the movement, in 1960, CFR Kennedy, he was a member of the CFR, probably was assassinated because he didn't want to go along with their programs. He wanted to take away the Federal Reserve or the powers from the Federal Reserve. He wanted to reduce them by issuing silver certificates, which he did, and within 6 months he was dead. So they don't fool around. But freedom isn't free. So we have to raise awareness to this obvious tyranny. Please, I implore everybody to investigate the CFR, the Warburgs, all the things you've heard on this tape, because it is the truth. It goes in drug smuggling. The CIA is involved in so much. Our government is absolutely run by these criminals. It is like the mafia, but the mafia are like Boy Scouts. It's like, they make Hitler look like a choir boy. They are behind the tyranny financially through funding rebels. To insurgencies, I mean, all this stuff. It's all the Middle East, all this nonsense going on there in Israel, completely controlled. I mean, 85% of Israel is owned by the Rothschild family. I mean, this is the truth. It's just unbelievable control and power. That is the militarism of it. We think of things the way that the media has conditioned us to think of things. Having been literally asleep for, since watching television as a child, I guess starting around age 6 or so, or 5, when you start remembering television, you're watching Bugs Bunny, okay, to a couple of years ago, and then awakening to the fact that you were under this manipulation. It's not easy to miss. It's not easy to realize that everything that's being shown to you is a lie. Only half-truths. No identical, the house fire where 3 people died, yeah, that's a truth. But when it comes to foreign policy or security of the country, national security, or homeland security, or terrorism, there's a lot of lies. Be aware of them.